Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have a very special guest. I'm really delighted that he agreed to tell his story. His name is Michael Shemwell, and he operates the Shunned Podcast and also the website thisjwlife.com. And he is a former member of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and he has kindly agreed to kind of tell his story and his experiences. He no longer is a member, but to tell how he kind of passed through this organization with a lot of interesting doctrines. So, Michael, are you there?
Yes, sure am. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. So, maybe what we can do to just get started is talk a little bit about your background and your experiences in Jehovah's Witnesses. We might abbreviate that to JW, JW, but Jehovah's Witnesses. So, if you could just tell a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
All right. So, let's see. Well, I guess it all started. I'm going to take you way back. When I was born. I was born into what I guess everyone would just consider a normal family. I mean, we celebrated holidays, normal Christian family anyway. We celebrated holidays, weren't particularly religious, but just had a normal family life. I went to school. I played with my friends. I had some aunts and uncles around and some cousins, and we played with them. And it's just, the typical childhood. But when I was about 8 or 9, my parents had, my dad, I think he lost his job, and so they had a little bit of a financial setback. So they had to move, and they moved to a different area of town. Well, they just happened to move next to Jehovah's Witnesses. So we literally, through a chance real estate happening, ended up right next door to a family of witnesses. And my mom and the woman next door really hit it off. And so my mom started studying with the lady next door. So witnesses have their own publications. My mom had a lot of questions about the Bible. And Jehovah's Witnesses have an answer for just about anything. And if they don't have an answer, they have a thought-stopping technique or something so that you don't question it further. And so my mom had always been searching for what she felt would be the biblical truth. Funny enough, her only brother is a Baptist minister and went through the seminary, but he couldn't answer everything. I remember when I was a kid one time, my parents kind of honestly making fun of my uncle in the car once and saying that, he said that, that such and such may be your truth, but that doesn't mean it's my truth. And they just thought that was hilarious because to them, especially once they joined Jehovah's Witnesses, life became black and white. There was true and false, and that's it. So Jehovah's Witnesses refer to their religion as the truth. Capital T's there.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. They have the truth. And by doing that and by conversing in such a way as to say, so when did you get the truth, or how did you come into the truth? Therefore, everything else in life is by default false. You don't even have to discuss it. It's not worthy of discussing. It's false. We have the truth.
Gotcha. So they're the truth over all other Christian or non-Christian denominations. Absolutely.
Gotcha. They are the one and only truth.
Gotcha.
Okay. And so, so my life really changed once my parents became witnesses when I was 8, 9-ish. We no longer celebrated any holidays. I remember my mom sitting me down on the last Christmas and telling me that would be the last Christmas. Not easy for a child at that age to hear. Right. But our life quickly changed from our, going to see my grandparents all the time and my aunts and uncles sometimes and just seeing everybody around the holidays and things like that. It changed, and my entire life became about going to meetings. They had meetings on Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Sunday morning. And you had to attend all of those meetings. And then we would also, of course, knock on doors. And we would do that at least Saturday morning, but probably Saturday morning, Sunday after the meeting. And then sometimes, even as a kid, my parents would sign up for special campaigns to go knock on doors for a certain amount of hours. And I remember we'd get dragged out after school. You go to school all day, come home, and go from 6 to 8 or 8:30 knocking on doors.
So did that start right away, right when you were 8 or 9?
It started pretty young. The knocking. I mean, all that's the meetings and the knocking on doors started right away. Gotcha. Absolutely. I can't remember exactly how I was when my parents were doing a lot of what was called pioneering and going out and doing a certain number of hours. But I mean, I was 11, 12 maybe.
Very young, yeah, I would say.
Yeah, very young, very young. You're forced as a child to be different. The only people that you're really supposed to have as friends are people within the organization. It doesn't mean that there aren't Jehovah's Witnesses that have friends outside of it, but technically you're warned against having friends on the outside because they might do something that could cause you to deviate from the faith or might influence you in some way. And if you do that, then you lose all hope of salvation because remember, this is the one and only truth.
Right.
So there's a lot of fear there
Right.
that's instilled of the world around you.
It's not just that. The group itself has a very limited number of people who are going to heaven, is my understanding. Right? Is that 144? Is that a truth within JWs that there only a few people are going to make it to this kind of chosen post-Armageddon phase?
Okay, here's the difference you're going to have to understand between Jehovah's Witnesses and most of Christianity. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the Garden of Eden, that the whole Adam and Eve story, that was God's intent. And so God is going to make that happen. It's been delayed for some time because Adam and Eve sinned, but it's going to happen.
So the return to Eden is happening.
Yes, and this is going to be literal on the earth. So any day now, it's been coming imminently since the late 1800s. Any day now, Armageddon is going to come, and Jehovah God is going to essentially rid the earth of everyone but Jehovah's Witnesses and maybe Jehovah's Witness sympathizers. And everyone else is going to live on this earth, and it's going to be transformed into a paradise.
Wow.
Now, there are 144,000 who are chosen to rule in heaven as kings and priests over all the people on the earth. So they are going to go to heaven and rule with Christ Jesus over the earth, which will be basically composed of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witnesses. So they'll be the ruling class within the Jehovah's Witnesses will be the 144.
Yeah, 144,000 taken from Revelation. Funny that the number is taken literally, though it's in a book full of symbolism. But I digress.
Good point. No, point taken.
So there is the 144,000. They will rule. How do you know you're a member of the 144,000? You just know.
You just know. Gotcha.
You just know.
But they're also, did you get taught like this dispensationalists and that Christ returned already as an invisible spirit in 1874? Were these things presented to the general JW adherents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So now I don't know about 1874. It was probably, if you had done some research, it's probably been changed. They changed things a lot. So in 1914, they believed that Jesus essentially took the reign on the throne in the heavens. He is now ruling over the earth, but it's what's called an invisible rule or a parousia, which I think is taken from Greek or something. Don't ask me to make sense of that, but so yes.
Well, there's some kind of similarities I saw between the JW and Seventh-day Adventist, where the end is happening soon, and there's predictions of Christ's return, and if it doesn't happen, then they just move the goalposts. It seems like
yes.
that was, yeah. So. And it was interesting, in one of your talks, you talked about their truth, that the Jehovah's Witnesses had their own version of the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Jehovah's Witnesses actually came from essentially the Seventh-day Adventists.
Okay, I didn't know that.
There was the Millerite movement, and there was the Great Disappointment in the 1800s where they were expecting the end, which didn't come. Right. And Charles Taze Russell, who founded the International Bible Students, which later became Jehovah's Witnesses under the second president of the organization. Anyway, he was in that movement. He was somehow adjacent to the Millerite movement. Okay. I can't go through all the history, but he was involved. Gotcha. And so you see where the nexus of all this begins.
I see. Yeah, so I mean, and so some of these doctrines and these, you had said in one of your talks, like you were spending 50 hours a month pioneering. Does that sound right?
Oh, yes. Everything gets real in the organization when you get baptized. When you get dunked underwater, then you are an official Jehovah's Witness, and at that point, everything is real. In other words, the threat of shunning, the so-called privileges of going out and knocking on doors so you could sign up to be what was called an auxiliary pioneer, and so I would go out. I was baptized at 14. And I would go out in the summer months, and I would knock on doors as an auxiliary pioneer for 60 hours a month. And then once I turned 18, I became what was called a regular pioneer, and that was 1,000 hours a year, or roughly 90 hours a month.
Wow. So like 2 full work weeks in addition to your regular life, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there's not much of a regular life. Life is pretty much being one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right. So you're really, I mean, in some of the stories I'd heard, you and your wife have also gone through this experience too. So you reference her often, but the dedication was incredible, really incredible dedication.
Yeah. They don't really give you time to do anything like think about what you're learning or, go to college. College is discouraged because they don't want people to learn critical thinking.
Interesting.
So they don't want you to see outside the box, essentially.
Gotcha. And I mean, it's just like the time. So, but the other thing is that the Jehovah's Witnesses have a lot of their own literature, their own internal literature that they hand out, but also make their adherents read and listen to, different than kind of standard Bible teachings. Would you agree with that?
Oh, they absolutely have their own literature. Everything that we discussed in those, it was 3 meetings a week. It was 5 hours. Excuse me. It was 1 hour on Tuesday, 2 hours on Wednesday, and 2 hours on 2 hours on Thursday and 2 hours on Sunday. And everything that we did, we always prided ourselves on being Bible students. And we did read the Bible a lot, but it was through the lens and the narrative given to us through Jehovah's Witnesses' own publications. They are prolific with their own literature.
Fascinating. So you had your own Jehovah's Witness Bible, and there was a lot of tracts that Charles Taze Russell wrote. Were you still referencing his materials?
Oh, no. They don't want you to look back because they've had to change so much throughout the years because they believed, back when Charles Taze Russell was was leading the organization, let's say, they celebrated holidays. You were allowed to smoke cigarettes. Things have changed. So things like blood transfusions, like that is something that they won't. They've always been pretty staunch about not allowing, but recently they've kind of softened their stance in ways and said that now you can take certain blood fractions and they get to determine, of course, what constitutes blood.
Interesting. What was the rationale for avoiding blood transfusions?
Wow. So in the Bible, it says in Acts, 15, 28, and 29. So Paul is talking to the people there. And if you read the context, it seems like he's mitigating a dispute between the Jews and the Gentiles of the time. And in one of the verses, he says to abstain from blood.
Right. That's right.
And because these were people who literally ate blood, and then it was offending the other group, and that's what he was talking about. And he was just basically saying, hey, everybody knock it off and get along. But they took that abstinence from taking in blood to mean even medicinally, even though it's not the same as eating blood.
Right, and that goes back to the Old Testament Jewish prohibition on eating uncooked animals. But
right,
so that was it. So, and there's been like a number of Jehovah's Witnesses who've died because of their religious faith. Yeah.
Oh, thousands. and it happens a lot. Unfortunately, when you hear about it, a lot of times it's during childbirth because women sometimes lose a lot of blood during that, and so here you have a brand new mother and father, and the mother's not there because she died a martyr for the cult and refused to take blood.
So you reference the Jehovah's Witnesses as a cult. When did that kind of when did that position change from where you were a adherent to this position, this newer position?
So it's funny. When I was younger, people would tell me I was in a cult, right? And I would staunchly defend that. We're not a cult. There's no one man at the top, and it's not like we worship some man. We worship Jehovah God. And so those were the reasons that we, and honestly, we were given those reasons, which is even more culty. We were told from the platform why we weren't a cult and what to say, essentially.
Interesting. So they had the response, like Scientology. Yes. It's like Scientology or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, honestly, once I left the organization, it took me a little while to use the term cult. And the reason really is more personal because nobody wants to admit they were in a cult. Nobody wants to feel like they were tricked, or it's kind of a shot to the ego, I guess, a little bit. It's just not easy to use the C word. Cult is a hard word to say. Yeah, right. It is a strong word. But when I started doing research into cult models, Stephen Hassan, being a cult expert, has described the bite model. That's if you can control a person's behavior, their access to information, their thoughts, and their emotions, then chances are you're in a cult. And we were absolutely, our behavior was dictated to us, because if we behaved outside of the dictates, the mandates that they made, which were subject to change by them, then we would be shunned and lose everything. Information, we weren't allowed to, we were actively discouraged from looking outside of the publications of Jehovah's Witnesses. We were told what to think, and we were absolutely told how to feel about everything.
It's interesting. So like you are hanging out also in this same kind of smaller group. The total members worldwide are like 8 million, but I can't imagine in every state or city that there's this large grouping of people. So you're seeing the same people all the time, right?
Right, absolutely. The congregations I was in, 100 to 120 people.
Gotcha. Maybe you can also explain when you also talked about the fog culture as well, in addition to the bite model.
Yeah, fog is another model that's used at times, fear, obligation, and guilt. And we lived in fear. We lived in fear of this coming Armageddon. So, I mean, it wasn't just, it was going to be doomsday for everybody on the outside, but we were terrified. What if you slipped up and did something that could get you shunned, committed some moral failing on the day before Armageddon? There's no forgiveness. You're going to be killed, everlasting death. So there's no hope. So you're in fear for your own life. You're afraid of the people around you, that they're, even within the congregation, that there might be a bad apple in there that might spoil the whole bunch, and that might tempt you to do something wrong. So there's a big culture in there, a fear of everything. And then obligation, going along with that fear, we were obligated to, if we saw somebody in the congregation do something that they should get in trouble for, and we didn't report it to the elders in the congregation, then we were as responsible as them.
Wow.
So there's
it's it's a snitch culture.
Oh, absolutely a snitch culture. I had to snitch on a lot of people. And I mean, I did it because not only was I afraid, I didn't want to be implicated, but also we were taught that snitching was loving, that we were going to help this man or woman be readjusted so that they could stand firm in the faith and have everlasting life.
So people were being brought before the man, like these 3-man panels or large panels, to confess their errors, right?
Yeah, so they have their own judicial system internally. Every congregation has a body of elders. How many they have depends on the congregation. But if you commit what they would deem a serious sin, then you sit down, you are brought before three men, and they go over what happened. And really, at times in very abusive detail. So to emphasize that, so let's say you have a woman in the congregation, a sister, and she had sex, but she's not married, okay? And somehow this was found out. She was caught in some way. This woman has to go sit in front of three men and answer questions about the entire experience, whether she enjoyed it, how it all went down.
Wow.
I mean, positions, everything. Like what kind of underwear she wore, like,
Wow.
and all this stuff, because they're looking to see, was this premeditated? It's they want to get into your psyche, and they think they can do so.
With impunity, it sounds like there's no
absolutely.
question. It sounds like, and I think one of your talks you said that some of the men had a overly salacious interest in details of sexual peccadillos. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in full honesty, I've never been in front of a judicial committee, but I've talked to a lot of people and interviewed people through my podcasts, and a number of people have basically said that just the questions, it just, I think it can't help but make you feel like you're standing in front of creepy men who are, getting off on the details of an encounter.
Gotcha. And so then the guilt part is also, you're always feeling guilty about possibly bending the rules or stepping over boundaries then.
Oh, yes, always. And it's not even just bending the rules. So there's a lot of discussion. So one of the things I find, and that I experienced myself because I eventually got suicidal being in the organization, there's a feeling that people have of never being good enough. So there's this guilt. It's not just about doing something bad or being bad, but never being good enough, because they always want more. It's always, they have talks all the time on, could you put more hours in knocking on doors? Are you not only at every meeting, but are you there like 20 minutes early so that you can have encouraging discourse with your brothers and sisters? Are you the perfect husband, the perfect friend, it's just everything.
So it's kind of like a works-based faith as opposed to grace, where you're saved by grace. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I refer to it all the time as a performance-based religion. That's what it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It kind of has kind of like a multi-level marketing feel, like you're constantly being judged. I mean, some aspect to it. Like in other less coercive environments, it's grace, and then you kind of do things through grace. Works reflect grace, but it seems to be
I didn't. So you keep mentioning grace. I have to interrupt. So they don't use that term. Jehovah's Witnesses do not. I had never heard the term grace in the organization. The term they use is undeserved kindness.
Wow, amazing. So they had their own kind of internal language, kind of like these other cults, like Scientology. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so everybody on the outside, was the term that we used for all of you were worldly. You were worldly. Now, worldly, typically, you would say, well, that's a person that's experienced, has some knowledge, some wisdom, some hard-won wisdom maybe. But worldly to us just meant part of the world, and we were to be no part of the world. So we had a lot. They even have the term present truth. So truth can be changed at any time depending on the men at the top and how they decide to change it.
Incredible. One of the things that Steve Hassan, who's very famous, you mentioned him, he always talks about coercive control as the kind of foundational thing for almost all these groups. So he came out of the Moonies, so he was also kind of in a Christian sect, ostensibly Christian sect. But you don't see it sometimes externally. You don't see this coercion. You don't see the kind of control. But man, when you're saying that, that's the phrase that comes to mind when you're talking about.
Yeah. So there was a man. So the organization at this point doesn't have an individual head. It started with Charles Taze Russell, then Joseph Rutherford, and it went through some different men, and then now they have a governing body. So at this moment in time, there are 8 men on it. But there was a man named Ray Franz, and Ray Franz reached the top, okay? He got to the pinnacle. He became one of the governing body.
Gotcha.
And he left. And he wrote a book called Crisis of Conscience. And in that book, he details meetings that he had with some of the other governing body members. And so that question of control came up. And I thought it interesting, a point that stood out to me from the book was that the other governing body members, their attitude was essentially, well, what will these people do if we let them make their own decisions? Wow. We can't let these people go on their own instincts because they're just, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be bedlam. And so that's the attitude which they have.
Remarkable. That's amazing. And like the other thing is like this, the religion itself kind of went through these different permutations. The whole term Jehovah's Witness did not get applied until 1931. Is that correct? So it's fairly recent. So it didn't come from the beginning. And it's also another unusual aspect is the focus upon Jehovah while saying you're a Christian church. So you're focusing on God, the God, creator God. Yeah, it's just really it's different. The ideology or doctrines are different.
Yeah, there's sometimes people will go through different talks or publications, and they'll just for fun, they'll count how many times Jehovah was said versus how many times Jesus or Christ was said, and it's completely Jehovah focused. So they had a book called The Greatest Man Who Ever Lived, and that book was about Jesus Christ, but it was one book. And that's the only book that I can think of that they ever really had, off the top of my head anyway, that was focused on Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And when people sometimes on the outside would question us, well, you all aren't Christian, we would, or you all don't even believe, sometimes people say you all don't even believe in Jesus. We were actually told to point toward, well, look, we even have this book
Gotcha.
about Jesus.
Interesting. Yeah, so you include kind of a book list of reading, I think it was on your website, of suggested reading. But when you talk about this guy, Ray Franz, how many people kind of either experience burnout or question the faith and leave? Are you part of a smaller group? It seemed like when I was doing my research, there's a significant number of ex-JWs.
Okay, so there are a few ways to leave, and I'll lay those out for you real quick. Okay. So you can commit a moral failing as they see it, and if they deem you not to be repentant and not sorry enough, then you're disfellowshipped. And when you're disfellowshipped, you are shunned. You are dead to them. You no longer exist. You can also do what's called fading. So sometimes people do burn out, and people kind of wake up, and they know they can't, or they just maybe sometimes they're even still mentally in, but they just know they can't live up to that lifestyle. And so what they do is what's called fading. So they just kind of stop going to meetings. They slow down, then they stop going to meetings. They kind of try to fall off the face of the earth and hope to be left alone. And then the other way is to disassociate. And that's what my wife and I did. And that is to send in a letter and say, I don't want to be one of you anymore.
Gotcha.
I'm done. And at that point, you are also shunned and treated as though you are dead.
But that happened for you 4 years ago, about?
Yeah.
Okay.
September will be 4 years. So there are, at least back in the day, the statistic that was given, and I think it was even given by Jehovah's Witnesses, was that approximately, I think 70,000 a year were disfellowshipped. So those are that's only the people that were disfellowshipped. There are a lot of people who leave on their own terms or fade. And so, cumulatively over the years, there are a lot of us out here, but we're very disparate and all over the earth.
Gotcha. But there is like a little nexus of people talking about it. When you get disfellowship within the Jehovah's Witnesses, is it a formal process? They write you up and give you a write-up and explain reasons that you're done?
So that is what the judicial committee is for. So when you sit in front of those 3 men and they accuse you of this sin and you make your case for why you're sorry, or maybe you're not sorry, but whatever, you make your case for being sorry usually. and then they will send you out of the room, and then they will call you back in when they have made their decision, and right then and there they will tell you, either what you did you seem sorry for, so we'll do what's called reproving you, and we'll just make an announcement from the congregation, from the stage maybe, that you have been reproved. And then you're still one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You're not shunned, but maybe you can't go knock on doors for a while or raise your hand and comment at meetings or give talks or something like that. But if they determine that you're disfellowshipped, you have 7 days to appeal. And now that appeal isn't that you can appeal the decision itself, really. You're basically you can appeal. It is taken to another congregation, and they just look over the paperwork basically and make sure that that the elders that you saw were doing things by the book.
Gotcha.
And they have a book.
Gotcha.
They have a secret book.
Right. So then when you disassociated, what was the kind of culture shock or the kind of changes that you made, to not really take part in the Jehovah's Witnesses anymore?
So for my wife and I, really, it was a process. It wasn't sudden. In 2008, I got so depressed, and that whole, not ever feeling good enough, that I became suicidal. Not that I wanted to die, but I didn't see much of a point in living because I couldn't live up to these standards. So my prospects of everlasting life, of this hope that had always been held out before me, those probably weren't going to be in my future. And I didn't really understand myself and why I couldn't live up to all the things they wanted from me. It's a very perfectionistic culture, and it breeds perfectionism. And I became a rabid perfectionist. And if you can't live up to that perfection, then you just feel like garbage about yourself. And they kind of intimate that on levels. But so I started reading books about mental disorders and listening to podcasts as well. Podcasts are big for me. So I listened to podcasts about mental disorders. I read books on happiness and emotional abuse and narcissism. And just as I worked through all this, getting more mentally and emotionally healthy, I could start to see the environment of the cult as being extremely toxic. And the more and more I started to see that, I had this lead time. So from 2008 until 2015, when we officially disassociated, we had all those years where we were waking up and we were starting to see life through fresh perspectives. So it wasn't sudden. So people when they're disfellowshipped, a lot of times it's just boom, gotcha. You're gone,
right.
and everything, and you've got a whole different life. For us, we were slowly building a new life and didn't even know that's what we were doing.
Interesting. So you didn't have a shock, or it wasn't something that was a super, orderly break. You knew what was happening. It was interesting. I wrote there's an article about you, I believe the Louisville paper, where you
Insider Louisville.
Oh, gotcha. Insider Louisville, and it was where you were saying that both you and your wife were having the same misgivings or concerns, but not communicating. So then you finally started talking. It's like, wow, yeah. So
because actually bringing up my misgivings to her, because I'm the first one to do so, was a dangerous thing, because she was technically supposed to turn me in to the elders, to quote save me, but she, although it took her a little while to come around, she at least trusted me to know that I would not have been saying. She knew that what I was saying was right, and she knew that I would not have said it for no reason. We have a very close relationship. We actually, not only have we been married now for almost 20 years, but we even work together almost every day in our cleaning business. So, yeah, she knew that she could trust me.
One of the interesting things about Jehovah's Witnesses is, like in a lot of these other cults, you have this overarching kind of leader who set up the cult, whether it's present-day Nexium, Moonies, L. Ron Hubbard. But one of the things about the Jehovah's Witnesses is, like, it just kind of built up over time, these coercion and the strictures of the belongers. Would you agree with that, or do you think that there's one person who really like, I'm really going to get these people, nailed in or dialed into this?
So Scientology has their David Miscavige for their L. Ron Hubbard, right?
Right.
The second guy comes in and things start to get ratcheted up a little bit, maybe. Mm-hmm. Same with Jehovah's Witnesses. There was Charles Taze Russell, who was he started the International Bible Students, and you could be any religion and come to those meetings and discuss the Bible, and there wasn't a lot of rigid dogma, though they were still kind of looking toward dates. But Joseph Rutherford was the David Miscavige.
Gotcha.
Joseph Rutherford, so when Russell died, there was actually a will that outlined a succession plan, and Rutherford basically, in a coup, took over everything, and he didn't like that Russell got attention. So for instance, he banned beards because Russell had a beard.
Wow.
And so he started differentiating. I think it was him who came up with the Jehovah's Witnesses name, and a lot of, I think the holidays went because of it. So he kind of started this path, as far as I know historically. I obviously wasn't there, but he seemed to have been the guy who started the path that made it turn really more and more ugly.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's remarkable. So what have you tried to like adapt to the opportunity cost, 50 hours a week out there is a lot of opening you to a lot of free time. I mean, you basically broke the bite model by looking at information before you left in 2015, but are you still reading, or what are your kind of present day? I know the podcast Shunned, you're working on that, but what else have you realized or experienced?
So, at first, my wife and I, we like to kind of have, at a point, we realized we kind of like to have a theme for a year, kind of a focus, often kind of a self-help type thing or something that we need to work on in life. And when we left, we had the year of adventure. So we just took a year, and it's not like we went crazy. We went to some concerts. We hiked a lot. We went to ball games. We traveled a little bit. But we just kind of went out and experienced life. And it was really fun to be able to do so. Then the year after that, we deemed our year of relationships. So essentially, because, when you leave, you don't necessarily have friends. So our first friends, like I said, we have a cleaning business and we clean houses and have done so for all these years. And our cleaning clients became our first friends.
Interesting.
We go to their houses for Thanksgiving and Christmas. They've adopted us into their families. It's a really tremendously beautiful experience.
That's great.
And so now, we've got all these friends and we've got a more well-rounded life. And I'm spending a lot of time now. So at first I did the This JW Life podcast. That's when I told my personal story. Then now I'm doing the Shunned Podcast, where I help other people to tell their stories. And not just ex-witnesses. There's ex-Mennonite, Amish, FLDS, lots of different groups. And then I've become a certified life coach, so now I have a Facebook group, and I kind of help coach people through their problems, and I actually do individual coaching and paid group coaching, and I just really focused on trying to because I know what it's like to be in that dark place, and I have learned so much through the years and taken away so many hard-won lessons and rebuilt a life for myself that is honestly fantastic. So I want to help other people do that.
What's the name of that Facebook group?
Shunned Podcast.
Shunned Podcast. So they can go, if people have questions or want life coaching or anything, they can find you at Shunned Podcast on Facebook, as well as the Shunned Podcast that's on YouTube, with all the information that you have and there's a lot of long form discussions, hour, 2-3 hours there. And then I also listened to your preliminary podcast, which was This JW Life, THISJWLIFE.com, where you talk about just the basics of Jehovah's Witnesses. So
yeah, they can also go to shunnedpodcast.com, and there's information there about coaching and things as well.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't get a hold. I didn't see that. We're at 40 minutes. Is there anything else? One other thing I wanted to add is I referenced this very recent article about you that was in the Insider Louisville. The title of it is "Shunned: A Former Jehovah's Witness and His Quest to Help Others." That was just published on June 2nd. So, and it's a two-part. The second part isn't out yet, but I would recommend people read that. It's a really good article. So, is there anything else that we missed, or anything you'd like to add or tell the listener?
Well, I could always there's a million things I could say, but the way I end all my podcasts is to love others, do no harm, and go be happy, because I think that's how I try to live my life now, and just to embrace other people, to look past differences, and just encourage people to. We don't all have to believe the same thing. We don't have to believe the same way. We can disagree vehemently, but there's no reason that we can't still see the humanity in that person and see that they're just a product of their experiences too, as I once was, because I wasn't the person that I am today. And I had a lot of misgivings about other people on the outside that were not fair, because that's what I was taught my whole life. And people can change if we give them a chance. So just love everybody and be happy.
Awesome. That's a great message. The name again is Michael Shemwell, Shemwell, Shunned the Podcast, and this JW Life. Mike, thank you very much for the interview.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, cool. All right.